Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. I'm your host Dan Gin, and today I'm joined by UK-based street and protest photographer Christian Cross. Christian's going to join me for around about 1 hour for an in-depth photography conversation. Throughout that, he's going to share his journey into photography, what he's been doing in his local area of Peckham, London, in terms of making images and a long-term project. And we'll also be discussing what it's like being more of a working-class voice in a traditionally middle to upper-class space that is the artistic and photographic world. Before we get into it, guys, I would just like to remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, then please do subscribe. Also hit a like and leave a comment, let us know what you think. And if you're listening via Google, Apple or Spotify podcasts, then hit a subscribe there as well, so you'll never miss an episode in the future. Right, let's get into this with Christian. Christian, how are you doing?
Oh, how's it going, Dan, mate? You alright?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm back in England. I haven't been in England for around about 3 or so years.
Yeah, I noticed you've been I noticed on your feed you've been travelling quite a bit, and where is it? Mexico and America and
Colombia, Ecuador, and then I've been all over, which has been great. And I'm not used to. I know this sounds super cliche and a bit boring, so I won't go on about it too long. But I'm not used to waking up at 8 and it being dark, and then it being 3:30 and it being dark.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the north. Have you ever been up north? Have you spent much time in the north of England?
No, I haven't really. No.
All right, fair enough. Well, I mean, it's nice, but at the same time, it's it's cold and can be miserable this time of year. So I'm trying to. I've not done much photography either since I've got back. So I'm settling in. All right. So that's the main thing.
Was it like you would live in a town or something, or you in a sort of middle of nowhere, or?
No, mate. I'm actually in the centre of Leeds, to be honest with you. But just been not seeing family for a while and things like that. So you start to photography kind of gets put in the background, and but sometimes it's nice to take a break. I don't know about you. Do you ever take breaks from shooting photography?
Do you know what?
Or are you
I have had
hardcore?
moments where I've literally taken like 6 months off taking photos before, because I just didn't know what direction my photography was going in, and I just weren't inspired by anything, and I just took time out and just completely just put photography down for a while. So yeah, no, I've definitely done that before. But I think if I went travelling like you for 3 years in all those beautiful places with good sun and beautiful weather, it'd be hard to come back to London in the winter and feel motivated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm scared to go out. I've got the heating on all day, so it's I have been out a little bit, so I've been making photos, but it's not about me. It's this episode of Inside the Photographer's Mind is all about you. And usually what we do is we start from the beginning. So if there's anybody, a lot of people know who you are, especially in the street photography community. But if for those that don't know, or maybe are unaware, how did you get started with photography? How did that journey begin?
See, mine, I don't know. I don't find, because I always watch loads of podcasts, and everyone's got these really great stories of how they got into photography in the first place. And I always think, you know what, I'm going to be asked this because everyone gets asked on podcasts this question, and mine really isn't that interesting at all, and it's really sad. Basically, I would just on the phone take pictures. I was with someone at the time, and they had a daughter, and they would ask me to take a portrait or take a photo of them when we would go out for the day, and I just basically got told that my photos was terrible. And this was only taking it on a phone, mind you, but I wouldn't really care too much about taking a great picture. I'd just press the button, take the shot, as long as it's got them both in there, and that'd be it basically. And I had a thing where I didn't like being told that I was shit at taking a photo. So it was like, from that day, I was like, right, you know what, I'm going to start taking good photos. So I got myself a better phone. So I got myself a new iPhone at the time. I think it might have been a 7 or something like that, iPhone 7 or 8. And basically started taking pictures on my phone. And that's how it started, just because someone told me I was shit at taking a portrait on a phone. And that's how I sort of got started. And well, it was one of my friends, he decided to get a camera. He got a Nikon D3200. and he was going to do videos and stuff like that. He wanted to start up a little clothing company and do music videos, stuff like that. So he got himself a camera, and I thought, you know what? I've been taking pictures on my phone. I thought, right, I want to go and get myself a camera. And at this time, I didn't even know what a shutter speed was or aperture priority or anything. And I bought myself the Nikon D3200 and bought about 8 different books on how to use a camera. And I just started teaching myself, and started using a D3200, and it just started from there, really.
How long ago was this?
That was about 6 years ago. It's about 6 years ago now. About 6 years ago.
So to kind of paraphrase, you started photography to prove a point.
Basically, I'm quite a stubborn person, and I don't know if that's got to do with me being an Aries, but I'm quite a stubborn person. If someone tells me I can't do something, I kind of try to make it a point to try and prove them wrong, and I've always sort of been that way. So it's basically trying to prove a point, and that's how I got into it. And at that stage, I didn't even know that there was a thing called street photography or anything like that. I just picked up the camera and just started taking pictures of family and flowers and anything you can think of. I was just taking a picture of it.
So I think that's common, isn't it? Really, like when we all start, we mess about, especially when we get our first dedicated camera. You know, not a smartphone or a point and shoot. We get our first dedicated camera, and we want to get out, shoot landscapes, shoot people, shoot everything. When did you actually realize that, like, all right, you know, flowers are nice and all, but I'd prefer to get into some hardcore street photography instead? When did that kind of start?
Do you know, well, I came across, it was an app called IAMS, and they're a photo sharing app, and I came across them. I don't know how I came across them. It might be the internet or something like that, and they was holding a street photography walk in Brick Lane. And Brick Lane ain't too far from where I am, because I'm in South East London, Peckham, so it's not too far, but I had never really been there before. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go along and just see what it's like. And so I went down there for the day, and there was a group of about 12 to 15 people. And it was just a day of shooting street photography together around Brick Lane. And, you know, it's pretty easy to shoot street photography on Brick Lane because everyone down there is used to cameras being around. And it was that day there that I literally got hooked on street photography. Taking pictures of moments and people and just whatever's going on, and it's the whole not knowing what you're going to come across from day to day. Anything could happen, so you never know what you're going to capture. And it was just that day there I absolutely got hooked, and from then I just started studying other street photographers, and
I was the same actually, because I was in London technically I was in Leeds when I first started doing street photography, but when I first properly started taking it serious, I was in London, and Brick Lane's Brick Lane's the place especially for new people, like you say, because so many people are used to it happening that you can kind of blend in. But like where you are, Peckham, like do you ever shoot around your local area?
Well, it's only been, say, the last 2 years or the last year mainly that I've really concentrated on shooting in my area of Peckham now. Because I've got so caught up into going to other areas, because I've lived in Peckham for 37 years now, so I've literally been there my whole life. And I find sometimes when you've been somewhere for so long, you just take everything around you for granted, and you don't really see what someone with fresh eyes would come around to the area would see. And it took me years and years of going central London and Brick Lane and Camden and everywhere else to realise I've got everything that I need and want on my doorstep. In abundance. I don't need to go anywhere. Just there's such a different range of things in Peckham to shoot. And especially in the last 5 to 10 years, it's completely changed where I'm from in Peckham. It's like the up and coming area. It's how Camden, I would say Camden used to be. And it's like what Brick Lane's like. It's like you've got so many people coming into the area to where 5-10 years ago, if you didn't live in Peckham, you just wouldn't come here because it was an absolute shithole, to be fair. It really was. It was a sort of place where if you went on the internet, it would advise you not to go to the area.
Well, unless you wanted cheap cinema tickets at the Peckham Plex, then
oh yeah, £5
you know,
cinema tickets.
£5.
But then you kind of had to get through the barrage of people you don't really want to have to be going past to get to the cinema in the first place. So it's whether you wanted to take the chance or not. And a lot of people, if you didn't live in Peckham, you just wouldn't care to. So the cheap cinema tickets weren't worth it.
I'm from Leeds, so I love a bargain. I'll take the risk. But
oh yeah, no, it's definitely worth the risk. But now it's just you've got such a wide range of people that live in the area, and you've got back streets where there's parts of Peckham you wouldn't even notice it or think it was in Peckham without going around there. So I absolutely love it, and the locals, and I've with me as well. I've got a connection with everyone in the area because I've lived here my whole life. So I've just got that initial conversation style with anyone that I come in contact with in Peckham. Plus, where I've been around here so long, I can sort of just, people know my face and it's just easy for me to talk to them. So.
Are people, I don't know, were you ever kind of like creative or artistic growing up, or like did the people who know you in the local area, are they surprised you've picked up a camera, or did you always have kind of something creative, even if it wasn't photography? What was, as a kid, were you creative?
Not really. In school, my favourite lessons was art and graphics, and so I always liked the art side of things. And but growing up in my area, it's not really the sort of thing that anyone sort of gets into in the area and around the people that I grew up around. To be honest, where I grew up, there's a lot of people that was just into bad things, and anyone sort of making decent money was selling drugs or doing what you're not meant to be doing, basically. So you kind of grew up looking at that as the normal thing to do. So I grew up in that sort of side of things and made a few mistakes, and so being creative, and no, it just you sort of close-minded to certain things.
I know what you mean. You know, and I grew up in a very similar area up here in Leeds, and you know, if you're into if you were into art or anything like that, you know, you'd have a few names and stereotypes thrown your way. But you know, I think about this a lot actually, because I think, you know, in photography and the arts, I see so many like, I want to be careful. I see so many like middle and upper class people, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's cool and all. Like, and I sometimes think, you know, are people who grew up in areas like I grew up in, like that you grew up in, are we encouraging them to get into things like photography, or is like, do you feel? I don't want to use the word underrepresented because it's thrown around so easily, but do you feel like you can connect with other people within the photography community? Do you feel like there's other people who've got similar backgrounds to you, or do you think we can do more to try and get kids from the local areas that aren't always too, you know, desirable? Do you think we can do more to get them believing that they can pick up a camera?
Yes, I do think we can. I do think we can do more, and that's one of the things that I want to do at some point. Is maybe open up a little place to where we can sort of teach the younger generation more of the creative sort of stuff, and maybe teach them how to use film and teach them how to document with a camera and things like that. So that's one thing that I do hope to get to in the future. But as what you were saying about photographers sort of being middle class and upper class, that's one of the reasons I've kind of shone away from doing podcasts, because I've grown up in the area where I'm from. I've always sort of been a sort of person that would watch a program like Jeremy Kyle and see the way people talk and how they come across on a show like that. And a lot of them type of people do come from the sort of areas I come from. So I've always been quite conscious about how I come across and how I talk. And that's why I've sort of stayed away from things like this, because I find a lot of people that I do see that do the podcast and are into photography, they're usually really well spoken. And to me, they come across like really intelligent. And so it's always kind of turned me away from doing it quite a bit, if that makes sense.
No, I get exactly what you mean. I think, you know, I can relate again, because So I moved down to London 10 years ago, and I sounded far more Yorkshire than I do now, and I've still kept it because there was a point where I was like, I'd go to these like events, I'd go to the Barbican in London or down on the South Bank and stuff, and I could find myself like modifying the way I spoke, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because sometimes, especially from the north, it's hard to understand. But like, but we do like working class folks or even people who maybe grew up in like or like in benefit class, where the parents are on benefits and stuff like that. Social security, people would call that in the States. We don't want a space where they can't be themselves because your background has as much value as someone else's background, and it also do you feel like that kind of, you and I would call it rough, right? That rough upbringing, and do you think that's influenced, as negative as it might have been at one point, do you think that's influenced you in any kind of positive way with your photography?
Yeah, no, I think it has. It's I've got a thicker skin for it. It's sort of growing up the way I grew up and sort of growing up rough. It's like I feel like I could sort of fit in anywhere. It's like there's nowhere where I'm bothered about going, or no one I'm really bothered about talking to. I talk to absolutely anyone and everyone, and I'm quite open to everything. I don't know really. I think I don't know. I think growing up in a rough environment, you kind of sort of I stuck to sort of being around my own for a long time. But
Got
then
you.
it's like I've got like what I would say like two sides of the family. It's like I've got what I would call my white side of the family, and like they're proper like old school sort of white, sort of proper South Londoners, and I've got my
Yeah.
dad's side of the family, which is the black side of the family. And I grew up with most of my mates being black, living in Peckham where I'm from, and so I had all my mates which was black that I was growing up with, and more so that sort of Peckham culture and that. And then I had a proper sort of white Bermondsey sort of white guy sort of culture growing up, going to like Millwall football games and being around that
Okay.
sort of stuff. Yeah, just so I've grown up around just all different types of people. The only really, I would say, type of people that I didn't feel too comfortable around was more so the upper class, because I'd
Yeah.
never really grown up with that around me too much. See, if I
Yeah.
was just thrown in a room with loads of upper class people, I'd mostly feel a little bit uncomfortable talking the way I talk and mostly standing out. Because to be fair, I'm covered in tattoos. I've got neck tattoos and muscles, skinhead, and whether you like to believe it or not, people they do judge you by the way you look. A lot of people
No, they
judge
do.
a book by the cover. So
Does that? I mean, I'm sure there are some downsides to people judging you on the basis of tattoos and a shaved head. It's not right, but as you know, it happens. But
well, to be fair, it
from a
works in my favour quite a lot when it comes to street photography. So I'm not complaining.
well, that's what I was going to ask, because a lot of street photographers, whether they're new or they've been doing it a while, one of their biggest barrier to creating photographs is fear of confrontation, fear of like, someone doing something. They might have a timid nature, so they don't take the risks. Like, I'm not saying that you would, you're looking for trouble. I'm absolutely certain that you're not. But it's because you have that kind of presence about you, do you feel more assured about taking photos? Because confrontation does happen, right?
The confrontation does happen. Luckily, I've never really had to deal with it much myself, but I've seen friends having to deal with it, and I've stepped in and had to help friends quite a few times with them being into confrontation. I've never really had much confrontation myself, and I think maybe because of the way I look is a big sort of help with that. But then I'm quite an introvert. I'm not really just out there and in your face, and there's still loads of shots that I miss because it depends on how I feel on a day. Sometimes I'll sort of be in my shell and I'll see a shot and I'll be like, oh no, do you know what? Just they've seen me, I don't want to go and take it, and I feel a little bit awkward, and so I end up not taking a shot. But then there'll be some days where I just go for it, and but then I'm also conscious for the fact that I am a bit big and I've got muscles, tattoos, and I can be a bit intimidating to some people that don't know me. So there are a lot of times where I sort of might hold back a little bit because I don't want to intimidate anyone and make them feel
Yeah, of
uncomfortable or
course.
anything like that. So I find I'm smiling at a lot of people all the time just to make them feel a bit more comfortable with me taking their picture. But to be fair, I chat to most people. I do take a lot of candid street photos, but then a lot of time I'll take the candid street shot and then I'll chat to the person afterwards. Especially if they've seen me
Nice.
take the photo, I'll go and chat to them and have a conversation with them. They might ask me what I'm doing, and I'll just explain to them or whatever. And most people's absolutely fine with it. I think it's how you approach someone and how you go about it sometimes. And it's like when I shoot down Peckham, there's shot like guys that work in the shops and stuff like that. Because now we're getting a lot more people taking pictures in Peckham. And what I
Yeah.
get from a lot of the people in Peckham and work in Peckham, they'll say, do you know what, like, we have loads of guys down here coming, taking pictures, but then they won't stop and say anything. They'll take a picture and then run down the road and just won't even interact with the locals or anything. And they just like to be interactive. If you're taking a picture of them, just say hello, say something, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
they appreciate it a lot more. So
I think that's something that a lot of street photographers, because I get it, you know, a lot part of street photography is like getting in, getting out, not being seen and stuff like that. But I think sometimes people get too stuck in their ways. And I think one of the wonderful things about street photography for me, and it sounds like for you, is that it kind of starts interactions with people. And I'm interested because you said you're quite the introvert. Like, does street photography help bring you out of your shell and start communicating with people?
it does, because I find having a camera, it kind of gives you something to talk about. So you've got that
Mhm.
initial thing to talk about, and it's like now I'm with a project I'm doing. I'm shooting with a RB67, and as you know, the camera's
Okay.
massive, like it's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
You can't sort of walk down the street and people not notice it, and everyone's curious as to what is that big thing that you're carrying. So it's a kind of conversation starter as well. And for me, having a camera, it sort of opens me up to talk to people, to where if I didn't have the camera on me, I wouldn't go around just chatting to random people, and that people around here would just think you're an absolute nutcase if you did that. So having a camera and being out taking pictures, you got that initial conversation starter, and I absolutely chat to everyone and anyone. Like if you look up and smile and you sort of see each other, and then yeah, that for me that's open to have a conversation and get to know someone. And like, I've met so many people that I didn't know in a local area just through walking around with my camera, to where people are just curious of what you're doing. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I find it helps a hell of a lot. It's definitely brought me out my shell a hell of a lot as well. So
Nice, that's great. That's why I love this so much, street photography, because it pushes you and breaks down boundaries. Now, you very quickly mentioned before we went on air, like kind of full circle. You're doing some work with is it a magazine or a newspaper in Peckham?
it's a local newspaper. It's called the Peckham Peculiar, and they've just started up another paper in the area that's right next to me called Camberwell, and that paper's called Camberwell Clarion. So they've got two
Okay.
papers going, and I think they hand it around to about 130 something shops in the local area, and it's a free newspaper, but it's just a local newspaper for the area. But where I've been shooting in the area and putting a lot of stuff on my Instagram and stuff like that for quite a while, they've obviously picked up on it, and they've messaged me and asked me to do a double page spread. So they've asked for like 12 of my photos, and then I'm going to be doing an interview, and they're going to obviously talk about what I'm doing in the area and the projects that I'm doing at the moment. So that should be pretty good, because then I can actually plug the project that I'm doing and get more people to come forward for the portraits that I want to get for the project that I'm doing, which would be great.
Are you able to talk about that project now, or is it still kind of
Yeah, no, I
under the
can talk
table?
about it. Basically, it's all going to be shot on film. So this year I've decided to move over to film and cut out a lot of digital. Like on my Instagram at the moment, I've been posting a lot of old work that I shot over the last couple of years, because I haven't been shooting too much on digital recently because I'm concentrating on the film stuff. So a lot of what I'll be shooting for this project, I won't be putting out. What I'm going to do is do an Instagram page, but it's going to be called Peckham Scrapbook. So
Nice.
there'll be like little videos of when I'm out taking pictures for my project, and maybe a few behind the scenes shots, and maybe one or two shots that ain't gonna make it into the project, but it's on the lines of my project and what I'm doing in the area. Just so over
Okay.
the year you can sort of see the direction that the project's going in, basically, and sort of get an idea of what I'm doing. So when I do eventually bring out this project in a book or whatever, when it's eventually done, you sort of would have been able to follow the journey that's been going on, and then see the finished outcome when it's finished.
Are you going to be like photographing local people, or is there a specific kind of subject that you're focusing on?
Yes, no, basically it's just documenting the area. So what I'm basically doing is I'm capturing people that sort of lived in the area for a long time, and then it's going to sort of transition from there, and like local the shop owners and the little businesses which I want to sort of showcase, and more so the locals. So I'm going to be doing loads of portraits. It's going to be a mixture of portraits, more and documenting, and just moments, and then sort of how it's transitioned into how things are now, to where now you've got the vegan shops and the coffee shops and the new people moving into the area, which is completely different from what it used to be. So I'm literally going to try and show all sides of Peckham, the sides that people don't see. Like, because anyone coming to Peckham and moving to London, there's still sort of grimy sort of aspect to Peckham, like there is most areas in London, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it's sort of on the back streets and it's put behind, and you don't really see it too much. So I want to literally get all sides of Peckham and get that into the project and kind of show it through the progression of the book.
That's great, and I think you're the right person. I'm not saying there's not other photographers who can't do it in Peckham, but you get a lot of people come into the area who are not necessarily from Peckham, or they don't understand it, and they're like, "Ooh, let's do a poor versus gentrification project," and it's just they don't really know. But for me, I love projects where like the person's like, "No, this has been my home for 37 years or so. I've got family here." I've got friends here. I've got memories here. I've seen the landscape change. I think you're the best person to kind of tell that story. Have you got kind of like a timeline of when you'd like to get it done?
You know what? It would be nice to put a timeline on it, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to be shooting a project for the year, and then at the end of the year, I'll get everything together that I've done so far. Have it printed out in little pictures, and I'll go through it all and pick out what's going to make it into the project. And then once I get all of that together, that's where I can actually figure out what's missing and what's needed to make it a finished product. So it could be a couple years before the project's done. I've got no idea. But what I'll do, I'll get everything together at the end of the year. I'll assess everything and then figure out what I need to complete that project or what is missing. And it could come to the point to where at the end of the year I look at the project and it might take a slightly different direction, or it's just about seeing what I've got in that year and deciding where I'm going to take it from there, whether it's still going to go in the same direction that I was planning for it to go, or whether it's going to go somewhere else. And yeah, so I'm kind of staying a bit more open minded about it. I don't really want to sort of be narrow minded and just be in going one direction. I'm just going to be out. There's loads of portraits. I've got portraits that I've got in mind that I want to take, and so I will go out and take certain shots. And like there's certain compositions of spots in Peckham that are like known spots that might not always be there they might not be there for that long. So I want to make sure I capture certain places like that. It's just I've always said I want to sort of document and capture things, because I would love to put a project together to where someone would look back on it in 30 years and be like, oh, I remember that, or I remember when that street looked like that. And that's the sort of stuff that I want to take. That it might not be for quite a long time, but in 30 years time people look back on this and like, wow, like I remember when things was like that still. So That's the
Yeah.
main goal.
Great stuff, man. Now, you also do. I've seen you're no stranger to getting involved in photographing protests, and there's been a fair few of them in recent years, especially in the past couple of years. Well, I don't know. They seem to be going on all.
There's definitely been a few.
There's always a protest in London, isn't there? What
there is.
But what's like? How does that compare to like going out and just doing normal street photography for you? What is it about protest photography that kind of you're attracted to?
For me, it's capturing history more than anything else. It's people just fighting for what they believe in. I absolutely love capturing moments like that. And when you go to a protest, it's so easy to come home with loads of shots. There's always something going on. Like, I don't really care for taking a picture of someone standing there with a sign, or you can capture that any time and everyone gets photos like that. It's more so capturing emotion and something happening or something along those lines. And I love being in the thick of it. I get adrenaline rush from it. So if it's kicking off, guaranteed I'm going to be right in the middle of it. Like, we've been in the middle of protests where we've been pepper sprayed by the police because we've been right in between the police and the rioting crowds. And yeah, we've been in the middle of it all. The whole battle at Waterloo was in the middle of that. And yeah, so when it comes to the protests and that, I find it exciting, and just so many opportunities to get great shots.
For anyone that doesn't know, what was the Battle of Waterloo? Sounds like something that happened like 400 years ago, and not.
Oh no, it does know that. Well, that day there, I remember going up to central London, and it started off. You had EDL was at Trafalgar Square, and the Black Lives Matter started somewhere else. I don't know if it was Hyde Park or it was somewhere else in central London. But I got up and I started at Trafalgar Square where EDL was, because you always find when it comes to EDL, they usually, in my opinion, I usually find a lot of sort of football fans. There weren't no football going on, so they all turn up and be drinking their beers and sort of get a little bit leery.
For those that don't know, the EDL is the English Defence League, and they're seen obviously as a far right kind of group, and then Black Lives Matter, we all know who they are, so I imagine they were clashing.
Well, at this point here, it was just the EDL that was at Trafalgar Square, so I got there and I called up a few of my mates because I've got a big group of friends that all shoot protests and stuff. There must be about 20 to 30 of us all together, and we all know each other. And so I called up a couple of my friends and tried to see where they was. And they had left Trafalgar Square already because the EDL protesters was attacking photographers. But they were just classing every photographer as photojournalists. So the few of my mates that would usually be in there, they had just left. They was like, you know, we don't want no part of this, not taking a chance. I managed to call up one of my friends and I got him back down to come and stay there with me. Okay. It's nice to have some company. So one of my friends come back down, and I'd been there about 15, 20 minutes, and another guy I know called Alex, I didn't know him at the time, but we was walking along just where Parliament Square was, and a load of EDL members attacked him and got him to the ground and started beating him. And me and another guy had to step in and help him. We managed to stop the guys from beating him up. But he had a bloody nose. He was bleeding everywhere. Me being a photographer, I still got pictures of it.
You can't stop.
I still got pictures of it, but obviously I'd helped him first, and like they was leaving him alone. Someone led him away, and he got helped out and everything. And then I was thinking to myself, do you know what? Do I stay here and shoot? And to be fair, it didn't cross my mind to even get out of there. And I don't know if I shoot with a little. I was always shooting with a Ricoh GR, so it's a little tiny camera. Yeah. It don't look intimidating. I don't look like a photojournalist because I haven't got one of those big cameras that's in their faces. So I ended up staying there and getting some really great shots. And then we left there and went over to the Black Lives Matter side. And I remember running into a group of my friends from Peckham, which was like a group of like 20 black guys. And
Yeah.
I didn't know by this point, but when I met up with them, they was like, "Oh, Chris, you've just gone on Twitter. It's like a video on Twitter's gone viral, and your picture is the thumbnail, and it's basically saying scum, EDL scum, and it's got my picture there, and it looks like I'm one of them because I've got a skinhead, tattoos all over me, muscly and everything, so I'm looking like I'm one of them basically, and my picture's on the thumbnail where it's saying the scum EDL and all of that. So I've run into my 20 friends that are black from my area in Peckham, and there's like, "Oh, see, man, fucking hell," there's like, everyone's seeing this video and that, come, let's get a picture together. So I've got like a picture of me with like 20 of my black mates from Peckham. It's like, yeah, we can't have people thinking you're racist and you're part of that. So they ended up taking a big old selfie with like 20 of us in the photo, and I'm like the only white guy in it. And then posting a comment and everything. So they ended up putting that on social media and all of that stuff, and ended up being on that side of the protest for quite a bit, and just walking around protesting. It was kicking off a little bit, and we got down to Waterloo, and there was a few EDL members around, but it was mainly more Black Lives Matters, and one guy ended up getting caught right in the middle of all the Black Lives Matters protesters, and they basically just started beating the shit out of him. And there was a group of lads that are actually from my area of Peckham, but they're all like bodyguards sort of things. They that's what they do for a living, and they work in gyms and stuff, and they was there to sort of help sort of maintain things that day, and they ended up picking a guy up in the middle of the crowd, and one guy, Patrick, put the white guy over his shoulder and carried him to safety to the police.
I think I saw that photo actually. Did someone photograph that?
There's two photographs that's almost exactly the same. One guy that sells his photos to papers and stuff like that, and I've got one almost exactly the same as what his is.
Okay.
And yeah, so I've got basically the same shot as the other guy as well, but I've got the shot of him carrying the guy out to safety, basically, to the police. So yeah, that was a pretty mental there.
So if we just quickly recap that. So you start off with EDL, you see photographers get punched and beat up, some guy gets takes one in the face. You're then I'm not laughing because it's not funny, but at the same time it's kind of funny. You're then you're the viral face of the EDL, even though you're just there to document. With a camera, exactly. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing what you're doing. You then go on to the other side, and it kicks off there a little bit. There's people getting carried out. That's quite like, after all that, are you like, is your adrenaline sky high? You're like, this is amazing, or are you like, I should probably take a break for a bit? How do you feel after a day like that?
Do you know what? For me, it's like, I grew up going to Millwall games with riots, and I grew up in Peckham, to where just constant fighting and just stuff like that going on. So for me, it just felt normal. I don't feel no fear in moments like that. You kind of just get in the middle of things and just go for it, sort of thing. So it don't really cross my mind, oh, I've got to get out of here because I might get hurt or there might be trouble, or I've just grown up around that sort of thing. So for me, it's just a normal sort of thing. You kind of just do it and get on with it.
Fair enough. I mean, you've got thicker skin and probably bigger balls than most.
Yeah, no, I've been through a lot scarier than things like that. So stuff like that just don't scare me at all. It's growing up where I grew up. It could be pretty tough growing up where I grew up. So
I can imagine. And just one thing that in the middle of all that you mentioned is, because one thing I noticed is you like, because when I first started following your work, which was maybe about 3 or 4 years ago now, like I think you're on the Ricoh cameras, but then I think you like to mix it up a lot. Are you kind of interested in the camera side of things, or is it just like what's your relationship like with gear? Do you like to change a lot, or
do you know what? Over the years, I have changed quite a bit. I've had quite a few cameras. Like, I've gone through my stage where I've had a few Fuji cameras. I do love Fuji cameras. I find the JPEG files on the Fuji cameras absolutely amazing. You can use the JPEGs and not really have to do anything to the photos. A lot of what I'm posting on Instagram at the moment is from when I had the Leica Q. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so that camera there, that's mostly been one of my favourite cameras. It was really fun to shoot with, but I find it a little bit big, and compared to the Ricoh GR, I've always sort of had the Ricoh GR as a secondary camera because it just fits in the pocket. Like when I had my Fujis, I always had a Ricoh in the pocket, and it got to the point where I just felt and enjoyed using the Ricoh more than anything else, just for the simple ease of being able to get a shot and no one even notice because the camera's just absolutely tiny. So
Nice,
I think
man.
your video's disconnected from mine. I don't know if it's up on your screen.
No, I can still see you. Does it say the video's still recording your end?
Yeah, it just says your video's been disabled due to internet
Yeah.
quality.
Don't worry about that. I think.
You're back now.
Okay, cool. That might happen a few times, but we'll have a chat about that after we've recorded. But I'm monitoring it, and it's
still recording.
Yeah, we're doing all right, mate. So
all right, yeah. So
cameras.
The cameras, yeah. So Ricoh GR, it's just such a fun camera to shoot with. It's tiny. The photos come out sharp, and I always found that I just had so much fun with it, and it fits in your pocket, so I could just carry it anywhere, even if I was going to work for the day or I was just stick it in my pocket. It just didn't matter what I was doing. It wasn't until the start of last year that I started getting into film cameras because I've got quite a few friends that only shoot film, and I've thought about getting into it for a long time, but then I thought, the extra money. Film's not cheap, and if I do it, I'm going to want to get into developing my own film and get into the dark room. So it's just a whole new process and a whole new other stuff and a complete new world, and just a lot to deal with and a lot. It's like just learning photography again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, but then for about a year, I've sort of been dabbling with it and enjoying it. I've tried out a few different cameras, and then I decided myself just before the new year, because I just love the way film looks, and a lot of people do try to emulate it, and that's what I find as well. A lot of people will shoot digital and try to make their shots look like a film shot, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to. I thought if I'm gonna want to make if that's what I'm attracted to, and that's the photos that my eyes go to is film photos and film photography, then I want to do film photography and not try and make digital look like film.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. And I know a lot of Fuji shooters do that as well, myself included. We use the film simulations. And I kind of have the same thought sometimes. I'm like, should I just pick up a film camera? I'm too lazy, to be honest with you, mate. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm okay. I'll do it the easy way. But there's great value that comes with shooting film. I imagine learning. It feels like you're learning all over again. It's the excitement that comes with it. The work that you did on the Leica Q that you're currently sharing. When did you take that? When's that kind of time period from? Sorry.
Well, these shots here I took, they're all from Istanbul. So in 2018, I went to Istanbul for 8 days.
Okay.
I had a friend called James English, another amazing photographer. He don't really post much on social media or anything like that. He's more into doing projects, and now he shoots film as well, and he's shooting like a big 4x5 film camera, but an amazing photographer. And he quit his job and he went traveling around Europe for about 4 or 5 months. And I said to him, right, you know what? At some point, I'm going to come meet you when you're somewhere in Europe. And he was going to Istanbul for 8 days or 10 days. And I was like, right, I'm going to come meet you out there, spend 8 days. And I met him out there. We stayed in an Airbnb and we literally just shot for the whole 8 days. And it was absolutely amazing. I only shot with the Leica Q when I was out there. That's the camera I had at the time.
Yeah.
and literally all day, every day, it's just wake up early in the morning and out for the whole day just taking pictures. We literally only stop to have something to eat or stop for a drink, and we'd be out taking pictures all day. And I think that was mostly in a total I think I've got some of my best photos during those 8 days with the Life of You.
I've been following it, and yeah, I mean the work is great, and I've also noticed, especially kind of with the more recent stuff as well, like the protest stuff. Like I personally, I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel that you've kind of just taken a complete leap forward in terms of like the quality of photographs that you're making now. You've always had the eye for it, and you've always been good, but I feel like recently, and maybe over the past year or so, and some of the stuff that you've been sharing, I've just seen just like, I don't know, it's like you've found yourself as a photographer. Do you feel that's a fair statement?
Yeah, no, that's really appreciated, because I think as a photographer, that's what you want more than anything else. You want to feel like you've found your sort of niche and you've found the direction that you're going in. And I've always sort of wanted my photos to be them sort of photos where someone would go online and see one of my photos and be like, "Oh, that's a Christian Cross photo. Like, I'm pretty sure he must have taken that shot." And then I get messages every once in a while, but you know what? I don't even have to look at the name underneath the photo, and I know it's yours. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of thing that I've always been aiming for. I still feel sometimes like I'm still sort of trying to find exactly what direction I'm going in with things, and so I still don't feel I'm completely there. I still feel I've got a long way to go, and I think with all of us, we never stop learning and we never stop progressing. And sometimes I go through moments where coloured photography is. I just think, it looks amazing. Like, it might be because I come across a photographer and I look at their work and I think, oh, do you know what, colour's amazing. Like Alex Webb, I absolutely love his street work in colour, and I think for getting layers, and as far as layers and colours concerned, I think no one really does it better than how he did it, and it's not easy to sort of emulate that sort of work. But then I look at black and white work, and there's some photographers where I see their work and I'm like, you know what, no, I've got to shoot black and white. It's just absolutely amazing. Like, because sometimes I do find like colours can add to, like, one of my friends always says to me, he says, if the colour adds something to a photo, then yeah, shoot colour or whatever. But if the colour don't add nothing to the scene or to the photo, all it's going to do is detract from the moment that you're capturing.
Yeah.
And I love to capture moments more than anything else, and feeling. And so I think going over this next year, a lot of what I shoot is going to be black and white. That's how I want to capture Peckham. I want to get more of a feeling and emotion instead of colour distracting from that. There's going to be portraits that's going to be in there. There's going to be some portraits that will be colour. But I think as far as the street photography and the documentary sort of side of things, it's all going to be mostly black and white.
Well, I look forward to seeing that, mate, because I think you're going to do a wonderful job with it, and along with the spread in your local newspaper as well, with the 12 images. It's it sounds like you got a lot coming up. That's exciting and that's focused, and I imagine if we have a chat again at the end of the year, that we'll have a lot to talk about. And I hope as well, Christian, that you do more podcasts like these, because you've got a lot of things to say, and you've got your own perspective on life, and I think more people need to hear voices like yours, in the photography community, in the art community, in society in general. We do a lot of work to uplift certain demographics, which we absolutely should do, and I've been proud to do myself. But I think as well, people from I don't know, what do we call what's the political correct way of saying rough backgrounds? I know what the political
I'm not too sure, but I think anyone watching sort of in our position, or sort of coming from the sort of areas and sort of back upbringings that we've come from, would definitely understand. So
exactly,
they'll know. But I just want to say I really appreciate you having me on, and actually wanting me to come on, because I always feel like the reason this is the first podcast I've ever done, by the way. I've been
Okay.
asked to do stuff like this before, and I've chose not to, because I always feel like, you know what, my story really isn't that interesting. So I've never really wanted to get in, because I feel like I hear other people's stories, and for me it's just so interesting. And maybe just because it's my story and I don't find my story interesting, but then that ain't to say that there ain't someone out there that's going to find my story interesting. So, but
Exactly,
as far
mate.
as doing other podcasts, I've been sounding a bit, but I've been sounding a bit for a while. I don't know if you heard of a company that's starting up. They should be starting up next month, called Front Photography.
I haven't, mate. Sorry, no.
Well, have a little look at them. They're on Instagram. They're called Front Photography, and I'm an ambassador for them. I have been for about, I think, seven months or so now. And basically, what they're going to be doing, they're starting up a website to where photographers like us and photographers can use their website to sell their work. Now, they'll deal with the whole getting it printed and shipped out and all of that sort of stuff. You just have to load your photos up onto their website, and it's a place that people can go to buy other people's work, basically. There isn't really anywhere like that, to where you could just go and buy other photographers' work. And there's about 8 of us that's ambassadors for them, and it's 2 really nice guys that's starting it up. Yeah, so I'm expecting that to do really good things. They're putting a lot of work into it. So, Front Photography. When you get a chance, have a little look, and you might actually want to do a podcast with them at some point, because they're really interesting guys, and I think they're going to be doing really good things for the photography community.
Okay, mate. Well, I'm gonna stay on the line with me, but as far as our listeners go, again, I do appreciate coming on. I'll put links to all your socials and websites and things like that in the description below. Thanks, and get some people to come and see you. But yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Dan. It's been lovely catching up and talking with you, and we'll definitely catch up soon.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Well, thanks again to Christian for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to see more of his work, then we've got links down to his website and socials in the description below. Guys, before I let you go, just a quick reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, then please do subscribe, hit a like, let us know what you think of this episode. Let us know what photographers you'd like to see in future episodes. We want your feedback, we'd really appreciate it, and it helps us continue to bring you the best photography conversation on a weekly basis. Right, guys, we'll be back again next week with another episode of the Phoblographers Inside the Photographer's Mind. Until then, have a great week, happy shooting, see ya.